Welcome to the Country Hipster Podcast. My name is Paul. I am the Country Hipster. Adam is not with us tonight, but we'll be back next week for next week's episode. But tonight we have a very special guest on the episode. We'd like to welcome international recording and touring artist, a founder and former member of the Dropkick Murphys, musician extraordinaire, and my personal rock and roll guru, Rick Barton. Rick, welcome to the Country Hipster Podcast.
Well, hello, Paul. That was quite an introduction. I mean, some of those qualifications are definitely accurate, but I don't know, man. Thank you for that, man. Great.
No problem, man. Thank you for being on. This is really good. I know we talked about this a few months ago, and it's great. I'm super excited that you were able to make time to do this and be on this. And you're our first celebrity type guest that we've had on the podcast. At least the first person with their own Wikipedia page, which is pretty cool.
I don't know whoever made that, but I think there are a lot of inaccuracies, but I'm not bothered to try to make any corrections.
I hear you. So one of the things that we do here on the Country Hipster Podcast, right away, is we like to get to the business of things. And the business that we're going to get to this week, I'm not worried about my shows right now. Rick Barton has a show coming up on June 1st at Rockwood Music Hall in Boston. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that? What's going on there?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you a lot about that. First of all, the venue closed down, so we had to scramble to get a gig. This afternoon, we're doing a live radio broadcast on WMFO. It's music all day. There's about eight to 10 bands, and you just alternate all day between two studios. Each band gets like a half an hour to 40-minute set, and I think we're going to be one of the last bands on that day. And my band that I've been using recently, has recorded with me on my most recent stuff, they're all coming up from New York because that's where they live. And I really wanted to play a show. I wanted to we've not done anything yet. So this radio opportunity came along, and then I was like, it'd be great to get a show. And I ran into a friend of mine that was doing sound at this Rockwood place, and I actually ran into him at the Dropkick Murphy show on St. Patty's Day, and he goes, you got to come and play our room. It's really cool, blah, blah, blah. And I contacted the buyer from the room, this guy named Adam, and boom, he gave me the night that I needed and everything. I was like, too good to be true. It's sure enough. One day they make a point. He even said we could use whatever opener we wanted. And so then the room shut down about a week ago, and we had to scramble. I was like, man, I don't want to be begging people to get on the show. It's and shows are booked so far in advance now. Even just basic local shows are booked out 4 to 6 months. So luckily we got on this show that night at a place called Square Root in Roslindale, and it's kind of a hipster spot. It's just a small room, and I know that one of the guys playing there, and it worked out great. So we got a show out of it, which we'll start promoting soon. They're making a flyer now that we've been added to the show, and
nice.
It's going to be cool.
Okay, so this is not at the Rockwood Music Hall then?
Nope, it's at the Square Root in Roslindale.
Square Root in
Massachusetts.
Okay, cool. Cool. I'm just going to write that down so that I remember. What you mentioned, your recent stuff you were doing in your new band. So you've released 2 solo albums pretty much within 6 months of each other. Nowhere Man came out in October of 2023, and then Coming Home you released on March 1st of this year. How did these albums come about?
That's a good question. I'll tell you exactly how these albums came about. I was basically going to my friend Dave Wesker, who I recorded with since we've known each other, and he used to work at a studio called Woolly Mammoth. He actually still works there occasionally, but not that often anymore. And he has a little home studio down in Plymouth, Mass. It's right in his kitchen, and it's cool. It's like he lives right on a pond, so when you're recording, you look out the sliding glass door to the pond, and it's obviously it's not soundproof or anything like that. It's not set up as a studio, but he has all super high-end pro gear because that's what he does. And his rates went down on his own, and so I was like, man, I'm going to go catalog a bunch of my stuff. I'm just going to get my acoustic guitar and sing and play as many songs as I can possibly play and, do it in 2 days. So he was totally all about that. And I went in, and the one thing he was very adamant about me playing to a click track, which, we know what that means.
Yep.
And in other words, you have a little beat going in your headphones as you're playing. It's really hard for me. I don't necessarily like it, but I kind of get it. And I especially get it after what happened. So I went in and recorded a bunch of songs. I don't even know how many. And I took off to Florida. I was going down to hang out with my dad and do stuff down there. Now one of my sons lives down there, but St. Petersburg, Florida. So anyway, all of a sudden, a few days later, my friend Dave Wester from the studio sends me the music. But now he sat down and played drums to everything. And I was like, holy shit. I didn't, and it sounded so good. He's an incredible drummer, like very basic. Well, you can hear the drums on this thing. So it was just drums, acoustic guitar, and a lead vocal. And I listened to it, and I was blown away. And I was like, holy crap. I was so blown away by the simplicity of that sound that I had seriously considered just putting out figuring out which songs I wanted to put up as an album and put it out as is like that, because I thought it sounded so cool. But then I started thinking more about it, and I was like, I need to do a little bit more than that. And not only that, but now I need to get more songs. I scheduled some more studio time. We're up to well over 50 tracks right now. In fact, the third album, which is going to be called The Great Unknown, that is done.
Okay.
It's in the can. We've just got to get it mixed, and that's going to come out in the fall, because my idea was to get out 3 records basically within a year, like old school, when Kiss put out their first 3 records, or the way it used to be. And my idea was not necessarily quantity over quality, but you might say that, except I really like the quality of it. So I enlisted. I was like, crap, I would try to get my son Steven to play bass, but he said, he hemmed and hawed. I don't know, the music, it's better, this is the best stuff you've ever done, and I'm not really good enough for this. And I was like, he goes, get Paul Yu to play bass. And Paul Yu plays guitar. He plays in Continental sometimes. He's a good friend. So and he lives down in Queens, New York. So, nowadays you just record remote. Nobody needs to be in the studio together anymore. So I contacted Paul, and he's like, and I sent him all the tracks, and he said, well, I got a perfect bass player for this. His name is Sam. I'm like, okay. I still have never met Sam. Sam Gerke is his last name. And so Paul had him play for the first album. And I got back to tracks. I was like, okay, this guy is unbelievable. Smooth as silk, just perfectly lined up with the drummer. And they formed this great rhythm section. They don't even know who each other is. This is unbelievable. And then Paul was going to play a lead guitar track, and I told him the only thing, one track, I wanted this to be stripped down, just like what I had recorded. I didn't want that to be all cluttered with tons of background vocals and all kinds of instrumentation and, 5 guitar tracks, none of that. So it's basically as is with a bass and then 1 lead guitar track, and that's it. And the first record came out great. The second record came out great. And I was like, okay, I'm going to formulate the third record. I've got all the material, and I'm just going to keep going. It's almost like for posterity, like recording all these songs. And people might think it's a different style, and a lot of people say it's country. And I was like, it's not really country music, because some country person, whether they like old traditional country or whether they like new country, the funny music, they would not classify me as country at all.
Yeah.
Like, this guy isn't country. What are you talking about? So country influenced, rock and roll influenced.
Yes.
Whatever.
When I heard both albums, I actually felt like I could hear some some Wilco and Drive-By Truckers kind of influence on it, but I definitely would not consider either record to be country. And it's cool to hear you talking about how you were just going down for this stripped down thing, and just kind of the acoustic guitar and the drums. And I personally would actually love to hear those tracks of just the acoustic guitar and the drums. But either way, like you definitely pulled it off. And that was actually one of my questions was like, it kind of seems like, especially with like the content of the lyrics of both albums, that's sort of, it seems like you were making like two concept albums. And like, is that kind of what you were going for? And then having a third one, or is it just like, it all just, as you're saying, just all kind of just came together?
No, it's interesting because the guitarist Paul Yu said the same thing. He goes, the records are so cohesive and they sound like almost like a concept. Yep. And I said, that was an afterthought because once I realized, I actually, even before Dave played the drums, I started seeing how great he recorded me, and like the acoustic guitar sounds so good and my vocals are like the best I've ever sung. So that night it was a 2-day project. I went in, I stayed at a hotel and I started listening because first he sent me everything with just vocals and acoustic guitar, and I was like, wow, this came out way better than I thought. Because it is so hard to get the acoustic guitar sound that I want. Like, it's easy to just put a mic in front of an acoustic guitar and just play it. Like, so many people just record the acoustic guitar as if it was an app because like it doesn't matter that much. Right. Yeah, it's just almost like a percussive thing that's just like, let's just put that in there and get that out of the way and stuff like that. But certain records, like Tom Petty Wildflowers that Rick Rubin produced, that acoustic guitar, it starts off the record and it just sounds brilliant. Like you can hear the low end notes, and then the high end is like very like they took time to get that beautiful acoustic guitar sound. Normally it's just like, I don't know, it's just you're strumming and it's not really, people don't really care about it. But I have a certain style that I want to go for, which is the low end, really like thumping along, and he captured it. So I said, this is going to be an album. And then I started sifting through the songs and I go, let me put this together. And I like in my head that night I was putting it together, and I said, and it all was falling into place almost like organically. And then I got to I said, I don't have track 12. I don't have an ending. And this is on the first one, Nowhere Man. And so I was like, I need an ending and an ending song. So I'm in the room and I started coming up with these lyrics for the very final song, which is Saw the Light. And the only problem was my guitars were in the studio, so I had no guitars and just my thoughts. And I was like, fuck, man. So I started humming the song to myself, and I was like, singing the lyrics of the light, and I'm like, wrote the whole song in my head, and I bought it in the next day, and I just like, I knew what key it would be in. I mean, this always makes me sound like a genius, but I'm really not. I'm just like a guy that gets lucky with songs. I really believe that. And then that song just all came together, and I was like, there it is, the closer. Yep. There's my album. And then the next album, I did the same thing. I sifted through all the material we had, and I was like, okay, Coming Home. And then how do these songs, how am I going to turn this into like a cohesive, and then the third one, The Great Unknown is going to blow the other two albums right out of the water. I mean, it is so good. There were like actual like hit songs that say Steve Earle was recording. You mentioned Wilco, and I do love Wilco. There are songs on this next one. There are songs on the first two that are incredible too. In my opinion, I mean, I'm not going to be humble about it because I don't even feel like I write the songs. I feel like there's some greater power that's making up songs for me. So I can look at it almost objectively. And I love my songs more than anything on the planet. I just love them. So the third album, though, it's just like, whoa, I've just been putting it together. And sometimes there's like these spine-tingling moments in some of the, I'm telling you, as soon as we have it mixed, I'll send you a copy.
Oh, I cannot wait. That is awesome. That is awesome. Which is what I wanted to, a couple things as I'm listening to your talk here, that kind of came to mind. And as
if it does sound,
no, it's, this is all good.
Okay.
This is all, trust me. Like, actually, well, usually what I ask when we have guests on here is if you've ever actually seen the Country Hipster podcast or listened to it. Have you?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Then you're right in our wheelhouse there. That we kind of just talk sometimes. Like we have our shortest. Well, I'll say our average podcast is usually about an hour and a half, but we have one that's as long as 3.5 hours. So sometimes we just talk. So this is great. So I love hearing your stories. I know we had a couple opportunities when we've played together to sit down and I got to just like talk music and whatnot. So this is great. This for me too is like kind of like an education. Like I said, you are my rock and roll guru, Rick. But to speaking of that, going back to, so you're talking about the acoustic guitar, and it kind of made me think, because I actually just got a new acoustic guitar, and like some of the things you're talking about with the tones from it and whatnot, I'm getting off of that guitar I have. Which I really love, to the point where I'm probably not going to play it that much because I'm really hard on guitars, and I don't want to break it. So like you were talking about your specific sound. Do you have, like, for the tech heads out there, like a specific guitar, like with an acoustic that you like to use?
Oh yeah, and it's even more than the guitar. Well, I bought this beautiful during the pandemic. I bought it because I don't know if you remember. Well, we all remember the pandemic. Whoever they are, they were telling you to go spend your money, and I was like, "Wow, this is perfect." I had saved up some money, and I'm going to go do some guilt-free local shopping because that's what they were telling you to do. So I went down to my local music store, Buck Dancer's Choice in Portland, Maine, and I brought a friend with me so that he could ring out some chords and I could stand about 10 feet back and listen. And I went through a bunch of guitars, but I bought a brand new Martin HD 20, and that just kind of blew all the other guitars away. And it was expensive, like $3,500
Yeah.
or something like that. But I was like, okay, that's the one. And then, so that's what I use to record all of those songs that are on these albums. But more importantly, back to that acoustic guitar sound that I don't like. It's like one time a friend of mine said that playing good acoustic guitar is a really thin pick, and I call it just a plunky, like crummy thing that. So for years I played with a thin pick, but then this friend of mine who mostly plays electric guitar, he used a real thick pick, and so that he could really get the notes, I guess. So I was like, let me try that. So I used like a really heavy pick, almost. In fact, it's the picks that Steven uses for the bass.
Oh wow.
And then I get these pyramid strings, medium gauge, like the real thick ones, and they're as hard on your fingers, I'll tell you, but you can get that tone. So that's what I do. I use a really heavy pick, the nice pyramid, the German string, and I just love it. Like, it's just that's what I go for. And then as far as the miking technique, I mean, I don't even know. I kind of know where he puts the mic, and he just puts one mic right around the 12th fret, about a foot and a half back. Nice mic. I don't know which kind it is, but it's a good one.
Nice. Yeah, that's like, it's funny when you're talking about the thin pick and whatnot. That is actually what I use when I play. I use like the Dunlop nylon ones, like the second to thinnest one, because when I've tried using thicker picks, I end up breaking strings. But I also have said I don't really know how to play guitar. I just strum a lot. So, but yeah, no, that is cool, and I definitely feel what you're saying about getting like a nice tone, nice sound, and it does come through on the recording. Which brings me to the next thing I want to kind of go back to was, what, like, this, both albums sound very much like they were, like, nothing's easy to write, but they just kind of were easy to write. Like, it all just seemed to flow and like come together, and it was like I said, like, there was a couple songs I wrote for the last Birmingham 6 album that, like, literally I was able to write them in like 10 minutes because it just happened. Is that like kind of what happened with the songs you did for these albums? Did they like just happen, or like did you really have to like pull the magic out of them?
I would never spend any time writing a song. If it doesn't come right out and I don't have the first like verse, chorus, I'd like not just the music but the lyrics as well, I don't go on. I just as soon as I'm starting, I start strumming something and then singing over it. And if it's good, I grab the phone and I put it on the phone, and then I know right away if it's going to be. I went to have read an interview, and speaking to Tom Petty, he said he knows the minute he starts making up a song if it's going to be a hit. But of course, he had actual hits.
Yes.
Sold millions of records. I've never been in that position, but I can imagine that, on a lesser parallel, my my analogy is kind of similar. So it's like I just know that it's going to be the song, and then I'll do a little bit of fine tuning. But if it's really good and I feel it, then the bridge comes. If there's going to be a bridge, and then the rest of the lyrics just come right out because the theme has already been established, and then the song is done, and it's just a matter of like. Then the hard part about the songs coming out so quickly is that then I have to actually learn how to play them.
Yes, yes,
and sing them and phrase them, because the song wrote itself, but I'm not even good enough yet to play the song. So that's the challenge for me anyway.
yeah, and that is a challenge. I'll say I am super excited to in the fall to hear The Great Unknown, because like I like Coming Home. I like Nowhere Man better. I think it's definitely a progression. I mean, if you say The Great Unknown is even better, I'm really like super excited about that. And with like Nowhere Man, probably like my favorite song on that is I Know. Like right away, like when I heard that song, I'm like, oh my god, this one it bops. That's what my kids always tell me when the song's good. Oh, that bops. So I don't really know what that means, but I think it's a good thing.
That was the very first song that I listened to when Dave sent me the stuff with the drums. That was the song that blew me away. Right, that was the very first one I listened to, and I was like, whoa! And it was just stripped down. It's still pretty stripped down, but this one guy that was a renowned engineer and producer from Boston. He worked at Fort Apache, and he did records for like pretty big bands, Bob Mould, and he's done lots of incredible stuff. So he liked what we did, and then he says, I would have liked a little more guitar. And I said, Paul, the whole idea was I didn't want guitar.
Yeah.
And he goes, well, if that's what you were going for. And I go, yeah, I wanted it, the vocals like really up front. I like the drums to be present. I like the guitar, but I don't like it to be like the main thing, the main focal point. I just don't want the song to shine through, past the guitar.
Yep. Now, and you say that about like breaking it down and having it very basic, but like on come on, not a love song. You add a little piano there, and some additional lyrics by or additional vocals by Lauren Ginsberg. How did that come about? How did she get involved with the project?
Good question. So my friend Kevin Garvin, he is married to Lauren, and he played in a band. I don't know if you remember, they had this band called Everybody Out for a few years, punk rock band, back in 07, 08. And he played drums in that project. And we toured a lot. And so I had gone to see them play once, and he was doing something completely different. Like, he's a hardcore drummer, and then and it was even a step back for him to play just regular straight up punk rock with me.
Right.
But he's like one of those ferocious, like, animalistic, can do anything. You know what I mean? Like, those hardcore drummers, like, the new hardcore. Oh. The drummers in those bands they're crazy.
The musicians in all those bands are like incredible. Like I like listen, even when you like think of like some old metal and you think like the guitar solos, like that's like classical guitar that I could never even think about playing. And for those bands to be so tight, like, yeah, especially the hardcore bands, it's just like they're pretty intense and very tight overall as musicians, even if you don't necessarily like the music,
Yeah, and it all starts with that drummer.
Yep.
In those bands. They all have great drummers. But anyway, so I went and saw them play one time, and Lauren was like playing piano and singing, and she did a version of John Lennon's Jealous Guy, and kept the the male perspective on the song, and I was like, and it just kind of blew me away. And she's super talented, and so I just thought, I'm going to send her a few songs and see what she can do with them. And that was one of the songs, and I loved what she did with it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, she's on Saw the Light.
Okay. Right. Yep.
On Nowhere Man. She's on that one too. So, but like, I stopped her after she had done about 3 or 4 songs. First of all, she was like, and she's a wizard in the studio. Like, she was doing all kinds of stuff. And I was like, okay, this is kind of where I didn't want it to go, even though I love what she's done. But so I'm thinking, I'm going to use like one of her songs on every record just because I love it. But it's slightly different than what I'm going for.
Right. Well, and that's the thing too. It is like I brought it up that, like it's the little bit of add-on, but it's perfect. It's like the perfect add-on. Like it really reminds me a lot of like are you familiar with the Bright Eyes album, I'm Wide Awake It's Morning?
Which album?
I'm Wide Awake It's Morning by Bright
Did you
Eyes.
say Bright Eyes?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love Bright Eyes.
Yeah, so that album there like has like he has Loretta Lynn singing some of the background stuff there, and like not a love song kind of harken to that. That's actually my favorite Bright Eyes album is Wide Awake It's Morning. And so like hearing that and like being able to put that together and like have it, sometimes you have just little things like that in my opinion, where you have like a little bit like of a piano or another voice, whether it be a female voice or not, that's doing something a little bit different. It just brings like the songs to just a whole nother level. And I think that was definitely accomplished on Not a Love Song. So I mean, just really, really good job there.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, she almost had me going all the way in that direction where she was going to play on everything. But that wasn't the vision.
Yep.
So I had to like refrain from that and pull back, because it did sound so good, and her voice works really well with mine. So I was tempted, and then I was like, oh, man, I don't want to let her down, but at the same time, she has her own music thing going, and she'll do fine without me. But it wasn't like, I could call her up tomorrow and say, you want to sing on some more stuff, and she'd probably do it.
Nice.
It's not like she was upset that I didn't want to keep going with her. It's just that was a choice that I had to make. But have you ever listened to Conor Oberst, the solo record that he did? It came out in like 2016, somewhere around.
I heard some of it. I don't think I've ever heard the whole thing all the way through.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Some great songs, and his performances are awesome. But yeah, well, I like that you compare it to that.
Yep.
Another friend of mine heard that song, and he compared that song to Wilco. He goes, it has a Wilco feel to it, too. But then again, Wilco and Bright Eyes, I paint for Tony Margarita, the old manager for Wilco. He's not with them anymore, but I had mentioned Bright Eyes and Conor Oberst, and he goes, this was a while back. I was painting his house, it was like in 2012 or something. The first time I worked for him more recently, but he said, yeah, they kind of got our attention. Because don't forget, when you're in a bigger arena of music, like, we all have our petty, like, jealousies and envious of different people in, genre, and, that are in our genres and stuff like that. But it doesn't really matter that much. Right. We're not making any money anyway. So, but bigger arenas, when somebody's suddenly, a threat, even though it's not really a threat, but bands perceive it that way. Like this friend of mine that works at Aerosmith, one time, like 20 years ago or 25, he's been with them forever, but he says, you don't get it. We're competing with the Madonnas and the Bon Jovis and, the Bruce Springsteens of the world. And I go, yeah, I don't get that at all. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's a different world. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And they employ so many people. So Tony says, yeah, they got our attention. And Conor does sound like Jeff Tweedy. Jeff Tweedy actually sounds like a little bit like Evan Dando from the Lemonheads.
Yeah.
Similar styling. But that's just the music.
Friend of the podcast, the Lemonheads. We actually just did an episode on them 2 weeks ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And I have a really, I'm lucky because I can't do cover songs. I can't, I have a terrible ear. I can't tune by ear. When I have to go back and dig up old songs or something, I don't know how to play my own songs.
I had the same problem.
And so I'm lucky, because if any influence comes through in my music, it's purely just happenstance. It's not I think that there are people that actually say, I'm going to write a song. I don't know who these people are, but I think they say that sounds like this. And they're able to just mimic a song, make it their own, because they're so talented.
Yep.
That I think a lot of people write music that way. I wouldn't know for sure, because I've never even asked anybody how they make up songs, because I really don't care. But I'm sure that people do that. And but I don't have to worry about that.
It's funny how you say about like remembering how to play your songs. So Birmingham Six, we don't play that often. Like especially now, we play maybe like two main times in a year. But we played this festival this past Saturday, and like I made the set list up, and like 4 or 5 of the songs of the set list were songs that like we really haven't played in years. So I actually had to listen to them like for like a few days before the show to like, okay, what are these words? What are these again? And I pulled most of them out, but like, you know, I still screwed them up. But fortunately, I was the only one who noticed. Even the rest of the band didn't notice. So I definitely feel that there. Yes, yes, yes. So on both albums, you know, since you know we don't know about the new one yet, but very much looking forward to that coming out in the fall. Like, do you have any specific songs that are maybe like a little more dear to your heart, like kind of like your favorites, or is it just kind of like kids? Like you don't have a favorite, you just have the one that gives you odds.
Well, I kind of do, because now that I've had to assemble a set list for Jose Siri Hits a Sacrifice. I get these baseball applications on my phone all the time. I love baseball, but I didn't really. That interferes. But anyway, so I've had to. I made up a set list for this radio show and for the live show that we have coming up on June 1st. And I don't know. I think, like I said, I love my songs. I'm not going to try to be humble about that. And but I think Maine to Mexico, I love. That could be my favorite.
Okay.
On Coming Home, I love the thump 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 thing. Like it's one chord for the whole verse, and I love that. I've always wanted to have a one chord song.
Uh-huh.
I had to go to like it's in G, just thumping along in G for the whole verse, and it's just acoustic guitar, bass, and drums, and then. You know, for the chorus, it goes to D to G because it had to make a change eventually. Like,
Right.
It couldn't just stay on that one chord. Although, I tell you, man, Ben should have tried that sometime. But,
Yeah.
So I love that one, and then I love the song right after, Two Old Lonely Guys. And that's the exact, we're going to play those in the set somewhere in that exact order. Yeah, so I you know, because that one's really special to me because, you know, it's kind of about me and my dad. If it was going to be about Two Old Lonely Guys.
Right.
And yeah, so those two, but I don't know, I kind of like the lead song too, that old familiar track.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
I don't know. Did you say you like Nowhere Man better than Coming Home, or
no, vice versa. I like Coming Home a little bit better than Nowhere Man. I still like Nowhere Man, but I like Coming Home a little bit better. I think it's kind of evolves a little bit more. It's basically, you know, like I had told you when you would let me hear Nowhere Man. Initially, I'd said like it felt a little disjointed at the beginning, and then it just kind of like takes off from there. Whereas I think like Coming Home, like straight through, like from beginning to end, is just like it's just in your face and in a good way, and just like a real, you know, cohesive album. In my humble opinion, as a
no, because most people are saying they like the second one better.
Yeah. Yep.
Too.
Yep.
Which is a really good thing because, as we know, for a lot of bands, you know, some of the greats, their first album is always the best one,
Right?
And then they're always trying to match that first album, and it's really hard. I think the Cars kind of did it.
Uh-huh.
You know, their second album was Candio, which might be just as good as the first album.
Yes.
But I've always heard the theory behind that is, you know, they had 5, 6, 7 years to write that first album, and then the next one they only had 6 months to do it.
Right. Yeah, and it's just like it's not as good. But no, this year, which is why like I'm really, because I feel like, you know, Coming Home like took a step up from Nowhere Man, and then you know you mentioned in the third album, which can I say is that like a world premiere news that you just dropped on the Country Hipster? Even if it's not true, can I say that's what it is anyway?
Well, it kind of is. Okay. The only people that really know about it is people that have worked on it.
Okay, nice. So we have an exclusive here, our first exclusive on the Country Hipster podcast. But no, I just the way that you know, Nowhere Man evolved into Coming Home. I'm really excited. I'm like super excited now to hear what Coming Home evolves to into the great unknown. So I really am excited about hearing that when you had those together. So besides the show you have coming up on June 1st, do you have any plans with like any tours that you're planning on doing at sea, whether you do it solo or with like some form of a band or anything?
We have a booking agent in Europe that he was trying to get us booked for this fall, but it's just not going to happen, and it's probably going to happen in the spring. I'm trying to figure out a way to tour that works, because I think I really want to stick with these guys that I have. Like, the drummer that I'm using is not going to be the drummer. They've recruited another buddy of theirs from Queens, and I don't even know his name yet. And he's going to be playing drums, but they're younger people. They're in their 30s, and they have the spirit and everything. If they, I don't know that they can give up their lives to tour, but I really hope they can. But I don't have to worry about that just yet. Oh, we'll see. They're young enough to like be able to drift off with me and then resume their lives. The way I look at it, my plan is to do a couple of tours and then never play again. Like I want to get anywhere between 3 to 5 albums with the Rick Barton Band. I think I'm just going to start calling it. Someone said they liked that name on Facebook because I promoted it as the Rick Barton Band. Just get a bunch of it recorded, go to a few tours, and then
nice.
Maybe not even so gracefully, just like never play again. I don't really like playing live. It's grueling. Like, I've been practicing for this live radio show and the show quite a bit already, like just practicing, but I put so much pressure on myself to be perfect, and I don't know, and I'm not a partier, I don't drink, I don't I don't have like the real fun element going anymore. 63 years old. I don't get off on playing live. I don't I don't get a buzz from the crowd or anything like that. Like, for me, playing music is almost like it's almost like just a need, kind of, rather than a want. Like, I just need to do it because I can't put out all this music and then let the band down, because these guys have all worked for free. And one thing that they kind of a stipulation, which they said, we just want to make sure we're your live band and you get let us play live with you. And I was like, yeah, no problem at all.
Nice.
And so, I mean, I'm not doing it fully because of an obligation to them. It's like an obligation almost to my craft and the fact that I've been doing this most of my life. But I've just never, the live performance is my least favorite thing. Like, I used to love loading the van. I love driving. I love meeting new people all over the country and all over the world. And one day I said to one of the guys, this would be great if we just didn't have to play every day. Like, do everything. Get set up, talk to people, but just don't have to play. For me, performing is pressure. Some nights I have good nights and it's like easy, but most nights it's like wicked hard for me to do. And I'm it's just not like fun. Yeah, let's do this. And like, I don't know. It's just always been like that for me. Even back in my days in Dropkick Murphys, and like, even when I wasn't the singer, it was still agonizing because I don't like to make a mistake. I don't like to ever like hit the wrong chord, or like I don't like to. I don't know.
No, I hear you, and me too. Like, I kind of have like some issues like playing live, and I mean, I've never done it obviously to the extent that you've done like throughout your whole music career, but like I'm kind of at a point now where it's like, if I'm on stage, if I'm gonna enjoy it, I'm not gonna give a fuck. You know what I mean? That's if I'm in that mindset where it's just like, fuck it, whatever happens, and I'm just gonna play, and I'm gonna like play my heart out, and if you like it, cool. If you don't, too bad. And if I'm not in that mindset, then it really is a chore. But if I get into that, right, like, just that, old school, like, the punk rock I grew up on, where it's just like, I'm just going to do this and fuck you, then if I'm that way, I fucking love it. It's like, it's the greatest thing in the world. It's my drug. But like a lot of times just playing, it's just like, man, I got to do this again. So I definitely feel with what you're saying there about how sometimes playing live, it can be a little daunting.
Yeah. Sometimes you're like, is anyone listening? Does anyone care?
Yeah.
You might not be playing smooth. Your wrist isn't like strumming the way you want it to. One thing though, I really learned how to sing live, and the singing part is pretty easy for me now, so I don't really worry about that. I mean, whether they like my voice or not doesn't really matter to me. It's like I've learned how to sing, so I'm good with that. But it's mostly the playing and not having any moves. I mean, you're just standing there, and you feel like your feet are like cemented to the stage, and you don't. I always refer to it as the Elvis hips. Tonight, I do not have my Elvis hips. I just don't like. I feel fraudulent. I feel like there's these people out there that can really perform. They're all like, if you ever just turn on American Idol any night, and every single one of those people, not only are they more talented than me, but they're these gifted performers, and they have all the moves down and everything. It's like, my God, so sometimes like that gets into my headspace. Like, I'm just standing here grueling this thing out. I can't take it anymore. You know what I mean? It's like, this is grueling. This is like, it gets hard. And I feel like if I do the same move one more time, the same way, I'm going to kill myself on stage because I can't stand. It's like, okay, I'm stamping my foot. Okay, I'm stamping my foot. And like, I'm not one of those guys that says, hands in the air. Clap your hands, and like any of that.
Yes.
It's just this internal struggle for me on the stage. And a long, long, long time ago when I was a young person playing music, I used to just get wicked drunk. We used to just like, when I had my first band, we just got wasted, and then that didn't really matter.
Yeah, exactly.
But I haven't drank in over 30 years, and I'm not going to stop drinking just so I feel comfortable on stage. But the one good thing about touring that kind of helps a lot with that, well, first of all, you're playing every night. So if you had a bad night, the next night you can have a good night.
Yeah.
Like, if you're doing one-offs in your town, you have a bad night, you have to live with that performance for like months down the road. It's like, I sucked that night. It was the worst night of my life. You know what I mean? It's like, and I just, I kind of live and die with this stuff. And I just, I don't know. So, but the touring, that's the best thing about touring. So you can have a bad night, and then the next night you're driving 300 miles and you're getting on stage again, you're playing, and you can make up for it. And plus, when you're touring, then you do kind of get your Elvis hips going.
Yes.
You're playing every night. Not that I ever could quite dance like Elvis Presley, but you get the point.
Yes.
Like you might be a little more fluid, and you might like the interaction with the bandmates might be a little better, and you might feel, and you might actually like. You're flowing a little bit. You can really feel the drummer and the band is like cooking, and you can feed off of them, and so. But at the same time, I've played so many shows, and and I don't want to be one of those guys that's still playing when I'm going to sound like Bill Belichick, the coach of the Patriots, when he made a statement that he would never be as old as Marv Levy coaching. I don't know. I don't. I just won't miss it if I stop playing, and that's the best thing about these records that I'm making now. They're very listenable. It's not like some old, like early, crappy punk rock sounding thing like that we used to do. That's one thing that's great about the old like English punk rock bands. They make great sounding records. And I guess the Ramones did too. But there were like old punk rock bands back in like, 79, 80, something like that. We were making some of the crappiest sounding records. so you could never listen to those again later in your life.
Right.
You know what I mean? You just could never do that. But that's what I like about these newer records that I'm making. I call it very listenable.
Yes.
And I said that you won't know who this is, but he was kind of famous in Boston, Dan Zanes. He played in the band The Del Fuegos. Have you ever heard of it?
Yes, I have, yeah.
Okay, and Dan's really talented. So he said, you're really pushing these records. and he goes, and I said, well, somebody asked you, and so what I said to him, I go, it's very listenable, and he cracked up. He goes, I like that line. He goes, can I use that? I go, sure, you can. I actually got it from Joe Gittleman of the Boss Tones, but he told me when he listened to one of my things, and he said, very listenable. And I didn't, that wasn't like insulting. It wasn't like the greatest compliment, but it's cool. Like, it's something it's listenable.
Yeah.
Because there's music that isn't very listenable.
Yeah. Or like you listen to it for a time and it's just like, well, this is good for that time. And then you kind of don't go back to it, or when you do, you're just like, ooh, what was I listening to there? But
Yeah.
so these very listenable albums, where can people listen to them?
Spotify.
Spotify. Yep. And you're also on, I believe you have on Bandcamp as well, correct?
And Cam, they can even contact the label and buy the physical copies if they want.
Are there copies available on vinyl?
No,
Okay.
again, I'm not rich. I'm not rich enough to put out vinyl.
It is
And
expensive.
Alex doesn't do that.
Okay.
For some reason, he's old school, so he puts out CDs still, which I at least like to have a physical copy, even though I'd rather have vinyl. Someday, that's what I'll do. I'll put all this Rick Barton band material out on vinyl. Like I'll just press 100 copies of each record.
Nice.
Not to make money, because it won't even break even. I'll just have 100 copies of each one, and I'll pass them out to friends, and that'll be that.
That'll be awesome.
Because I spend money on music.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've never made money playing music. I put so much money into my craft, and I don't mind, because to me it's not even about the investment, because it's not an investment. It's a losing proposition. But I'd rather spend my money there than on clothes or a house or anything. I spend my money on music, on creating music, and because sometimes you have to, because no one's running around doling out like $100,000 recording.
Yeah.
That's a thing of the past. That just doesn't happen anymore. I mean, they'll be doling out the big gigantic contracts on the big country stars, or big people get those contracts still. But there was a time when just regular bands used to get big contracts to record. In the early days of punk rock and stuff, they like Electro Records would come around and start signing Boston bands and giving them advances and stuff, and labels were doing that because the labels were powerful and they had so much money. But what they were really doing was just using it as a tax write-off.
Yeah.
They didn't even care. They just give you a bunch of money, just write it off, and then the band would make a crappy record, and they'd never tour, and that would be the end of the band. I know so many bands that happened to. And it's kind of almost criminal in a way, but that's just back then.
Yeah, kind of reminds me of, there was a movie that came out in, I think it was the early 2000s, maybe it was the late 90s, called 24-Hour Party People. And it was about factory records over in England, and basically, the whole second half of the movie is about how basically the Happy Mondays took like all the money and went like down to like the island somewhere to record an album, and like didn't record anything.
Wow.
Yeah, so so it's I guess it's as you're saying, that's kind of the stuff what was happening then, which kind of actually, if you have some more time, it kind of leads me to like my next like kind of like lines of questioning here. So like, like when and like why did you start playing music?
Let's see. Early have an identity in to get laid.
Yep.
Those go hand in hand. Well, the way we started, my brother Dave, when we were like kids, and we loved music. When you're a kid, when you're 12 years old, 11, 12 years old, you find this music, this rock and roll thing that I'm talking about, like early 70s. So I'm way early 70s, and we started a band, and at first, and I was the singer, but I couldn't sing, and it turned out my brother was a much better singer than me. I ended up getting kicked out of the band. I just wanted the party of it, but we never played a gig or anything. But then my parents, for some reason, moved to Florida, and that was January of '75. And so me and my brother, well, we kind of just had each other. But he was good. But he would have me play the guitar, like he'd have me play Louie Louie over and over, so that he could practice soloing, and I'd just be like, and that's all I could play was those three chords. I just play that, and he'd solo, and he'd have me doing it for like 2 hours, and I'd be like, my God. And then he said, well, okay, let's start a band down here in Florida, because we didn't know anyone. And then we found like this incredible drummer, Mike D'Amico, and he ended up becoming a percussionist and like bass player for Brian Wilson.
Wow.
Gifted this kid was.
Gee.
And then we found this kid, Don Gallagher, on bass. And at the time we we had a singer. He was like about 2 years older than us. We were all like in 8th and ninth grade, right? And we find the singer's name was Glenn Jewell. I can't believe I'm remembering all these names. Probably maybe because I'm getting ready. Right, I'm ready. I'm right around 1975 on my memoir. So maybe that's. But anyway, we played at the junior high school dance, and me and my brother were playing through a Fender Showman amp. It had a separate head and a 212 cabinet, and we were both plugged into the same amp. That's how little we knew. But I'll tell you, man, we went from, because down there at that time, like, like if you live up north and you get a new kid, you might get a new kid once every 2 years at the most. But Florida was like, especially we moved to the city that had started, it was incorporated in 19, and it was only like 8 years old when we moved there. There were new kids coming all the time, like dozens and dozens of new kids. So you were just like lost in no one really cared about you. So, but we played that show, and man, on Monday, we were the stars of the school and accomplished everything.
That's awesome.
The girls liked us. Everyone loved us, and there we were. We were the band from that junior high school, and so that stuck with me. I was like, wow, this is like a way to have an identity. It's a way to be somebody. I didn't really care about the music. I mean, like, I love music, but I didn't care about playing it, and I just didn't think too much about that part of it. So I just knew that I just did what my brother, even though my brother was a year younger than me, he was just more talented than me. So I just went along with it. I was like, well, I'll just keep playing this, these three chords over and over. And I actually became a pretty good rhythm guitar player for that. But so that's essentially why I got into it. And it just continued that way. We moved back to Boston right around in March 79, and I really started hearing all this local music. It was on the radio and stuff, and that was like incredible. I was like, my brother had stayed down there in Florida. I called him up. We were like, by this time we were about 17 and 18. I go, dude, there's bands on the radio that we're better than. And I go, you should really get up here. And it was college radio. It was punk rock. Of course, I knew about punk rock by this time. I had the Sex Pistols album, Clash albums, and all of that. But those sound great, But these are like local bands that weren't that good on the radio. So he came right up. We formed a band. For some reason, we got popular. It was a band called The Outlets. We caught on right away in Boston. We were getting like great slots at the Rat and all the legendary clubs. And once again, there we were, and it seems like every time I've formed something, it's been good.
Okay.
I don't know. It's just worked out that it's always caught on right away. And then I don't know if that's luck or how it worked out, but so that was a good experience. You know what I mean? And that's why I just kept playing, because it was like something to do. It was kind of like instead of being in a bowling league, I was in a band.
And so, like, with that, like, how did Dropkick Murphys come about?
That came about. Well, I used to go to these AA meetings, and Kenny and Mike were in the same group. And even though they were like 9-10 years younger than me, this was like 90, 94, 95, and I used to hang out with Kenny and Mike. But there was never any talk about music. We used to talk about like the Bruins and sports and this, that, or the other thing. And we knew about music together. They actually were the first ones to turn me on to like the punk rock thing in California, like Guttermouth and Swingin' Utters and stuff like that. I didn't know who those bands were at all. And Kenny knew those bands. And what I didn't know, and I'm just going to be joking right now when I said they were grooming me. I always like to say this. I always like to say that one day, after several years of knowing these guys and not thinking they had any musical aspirations whatsoever, because first of all, they were like 24, 25 years old, and they didn't play music. They never had. And as we know, you start playing music when you're 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16, you're a late bloomer if you haven't picked up the guitar by the time you're 16. So they all of a sudden said, we want to get just have a fun little band thing and play some covers. And they go, would you help us? And I was like, are these guys out of their fucking minds? Because by this time, the Outlets were over. Like I said, it was like 94, 95 that I met those guys. And the Outlets went from like '79 until about '92, and we've done a few reunion shows, which I hate. But so I was like, and by then I was just starting to play the acoustic guitar. I was kind of getting ready to do what I'm doing right now. So I was like, they must be crazy. I'm gonna like pick up with these people that don't even know how to play music and try to show them how to play music. And I thought they were insane. I said, but I like Kenny, I like Mike. I'm gonna do it. So, they said they had a guitar player. They said they were just gonna use me until this guitar player got a guitar or something like that, right? And I was like, okay. And so we start going down. We find this shitty little practice space in the downstairs of a barber shop in Wollaston, and you had to go down like a trap, open up this trap door, and go down a ladder. And I'm sitting there carrying my Marshall amp down this into the 2 floors. I mean, it was like a place where rats would exist, like actually playing. But Kenny was always, right from the beginning, he was frugal, and he watched the money. He knew what was going on all the time. Like, it was free. That's why we were in this basement. And we stopped playing, and they were so bad. They didn't know how to play. Kenny didn't know how to play the bass. I had to tape the notes on the back of his bass. And they were bringing down these drummers that were horrible, that couldn't even keep a beat. I mean, like, really bad. Good guys, all good guys, but just they couldn't play. So finally, pulled Kenny aside at one point, and maybe we were at a meeting or something. I said, listen, I can't keep coming down. We have to get a drummer. I go, we have to get a drummer because this is painful. So I enlisted my friend Billy Close, who was a guitar player for the Freeze, but he knew how to play all kinds of music. Billy and I had been friends for a long time, and the Freeze are a legendary old Boston punk rock band. And Billy's gifted, super talented guy. And we were on jobs together. Like, Bill's a carpenter, and I'd be on jobs with him. I was painting. So I bring Bill down. Right away, things change. As soon as you get that drummer, the keep beat. So then I was like, okay, this is pretty good. So I'd make up a little thing on the guitar, and then I'd like tell Mike, I go, dude, whatever you've got, just come in screaming. Screaming. Because I knew that Mike had something, but I just wasn't sure what it was. So then we made up 7 or 8 songs, and then but a very interesting thing happened, which I don't even know if Kenny knows the story or not. I mean, you couldn't care less about the story, but
let's hear it.
On a job. And one day, and this was before cell phones. Okay, so it was like 95, and or smartphones anyway, or we didn't have cell phones.
Right.
Let's put it that way. So I know cell phones, like over in Europe and Sweden and stuff, they had already had them in the 90s, but we didn't have them, and they weren't that commonplace. So Billy and I were on the job. And he goes, we played one like AA function party, and then we played one gig, and Billy, where you go, Derek. Billy's funny. He's got a heavy fucking New England accent. I do too, but he's like, and he always calls me Dick, which is a nickname for Richard. He goes, Derek, I can't take this, Casey. I go, Billy. I go, well, Billy even started. And he goes, I know. And I go, and then I agreed. I said, I can't take him either. I mean, he's overbearing. He's like, and because Kenny was all business right out of the gate. He had a plan. I didn't know he had a plan. All I knew is that he was nervous all the time, that he was like, everything had to be there was this thing that he had going, which I had never heard of. We played music to get drunk, pick up chicks, and have fun. You know what I mean? Back in the day.
Yeah.
I had never come into an experience like this before in my life. So we're all sober. Billy was sober too. And I go, okay, Bill, here's what we're going to do. The first guy home, at the end of the day, when we finish work, I go, the first guy home calls Casey and quits. And I go, and the other person loses out in the sweepstakes and has to stay on, because if we both quit, Kenny's going to be distraught. Billy would keep me home. Then he called me like minutes after I got in the door. He's like, Billy quit. He goes, what are we going to do? And he was like, all freaking out and stuff. And I go, oof. I go, man, just calm down, Kenny. I go, I'll get us another drummer. I don't know if I won the race home, then we wouldn't be talking on the phone right now. But I lost that race.
I'm glad you did.
So I found this guy, Jeff Arna, who was a step up from Billy on the drums. And Jeff's on the very first demo. So we had put together like 10 songs. and Kenny was booking us in all these, like, I thought punk rock was dead. You know, I didn't know that it kept going, and I think the California scene kept it going, but it wasn't. Punk rock kind of died on the East Coast. It was, you know, there was still hardcore bands maybe, but the actual like punk rock thing was dead. So we sat playing these shows, and there were like punk people, and I go, punk people? This is so weird. You know, like people from 15 years ago that like they're the same, but they're more outrageous, and they're dressed cooler. They're like even more. You know, back in the like 70s when I was first exposed to punk, it was more rudimentary. There were some people that were really quite fashionable back then, but the second wave of punk, it was like, man, they've upped the game. All these tattoos and piercings, and they're really like going for it.
Yeah.
So, we get Jeff, and then we started playing local shows, and we were really popular. It's in Boston, and we were like better than all. I don't want to sound pompous, but we were just better than all the other bands. We had something, but I didn't know it at the time. I was like, but my peers would be like, you guys got it all. You get the style, the sound, the lead singer. He goes, your guitar playing. Goes, you guys, it's all there. And, by this time, Matt Kelly was on the drums, and that guy's incredible. And that's like the first album. And I didn't know how good those songs were. Like, I had no idea that music was good. I just didn't know. And that's basically, that band happened pretty organically, just the only thing that was unusual about that band is from our first practice, within a year, we were signed to the biggest punk rock label in the world, which is like, just nobody has ever done that. You know what I mean? And that's all because of Ken Casey. I mean, it had a little to do with me, and it had more to probably to do with Mike because he was so unique as a singer. So if you throw like, 20% to Mike and 10% to me, it's like 70% of that band was, and the reason that we got where we did so quickly was because of Kenny. Kenny was a taskmaster, like diligent. He was painful, just like Billy said. I can't take this guy anymore. And as much as that ended up, grating on me, and me and Kenny butted heads for like 5 years till I finally quit. But then I came to realize, like when I started Continental years later, and everybody out, I realized. Then I had a moment of reckoning. I was like, my God, this guy Kenny, he really. Now then I realized what he was going through. You can't see me right now, so I can't do the position that he was in all the time with like his forefinger and his thumb on his forehead,
right,
and then the phone on his ear, and he had this constant look of dread on his face, like all the time, and it was like, and he was just working that thing and working that thing and working that thing. And when I saw the way that band developed and the way we did things and how serious it was, then I realized, man, all of my friends and people in bands and stuff are just so off from what we thought. Like, we thought it was all about the song. It's not about the song. Yeah, you have to have good songs, but it's more about building a grassroots following, getting in the van, touring incessantly, which we did, and just knowing that target audience and knowing what they wanted, and then following through. It was constant following through. You just had to. I don't know. It was serious. Yeah. It was real serious, and we took that punk rock world by storm. Yeah. I mean, by the time I quit, we were headlining like 1,200 seat theaters. I knew the thing was going all the way to where it is now. Yes. Me and Kenny hated each other after 5 years. Yeah. Went from friends to we just couldn't coexist anymore. We were working on the third album, and I quit right in the middle of recording the third album. And that's the history of that.
Which brings me to next. So you guys did like those, like a bunch of like albums. I'm like actually looking at your like the discography of when you were in it, and besides like 7 inches and compilations and whatnot, you guys did like 3 full-length albums in like a very short period of time, right?
Yeah, we did Do or Die, Gangs All Here, and Sing Loud, Sing Proud, which at the time I didn't get credited for, but trust me, I made up a lot of those songs. Okay. I like to say, like I wrote the music for Good Rats, and Shane McGowan sang on that for a video, and I never met him, and it's weird that I you know, but I know why Kenny didn't give me credit for any of that. It's because the Torch is on that album. I wrote that one. I wrote a lot of the music for that record, and he only gave me credit for writing, for playing guitar on 4 songs, which played on way more than that. And I left him at a tough spot. And that's when he changed and decided he was going to have like way more people in the band and be kind of more like the Pogues right then and there. And so I left him at a really difficult spot. So that's why it doesn't bother me anymore that he didn't credit me with any of the writing on that record. I wasn't a team player. I failed him, you know, and I didn't deserve, even though I made up the songs, and some 99 out of 100 people will go, "You should have got the credit." And people do say that to me. And I say, no, not really, because he had to, you know, the singer had already quit. Now the guitar player is quitting. This poor guy, man, he's put his whole life into this. So, you know, he basically, I think on that album, he said all songs written by the Dropkick Murphys. He changed it to that, which was a smart thing to do. Yeah. And I totally understand why he did that. Because he was, you know, it was a tough position to be in because people knew who I was, and he didn't want the, I guess probably like, you know, he knew he had to create something new now, and it would be like, you know, because people might be, oh, everyone's quitting on, you know, on this guy. Who is this band? You know what I mean? Like, geez, there's no original members anymore. Like, you know, and man, he masterfully took it to the next level, and he just kept taking it to the next level. He's a master. One time, me and Mike and Billy Close were sitting in the Wheelhouse Diner in North Quincy. I'll never forget. And Billy must have been expressing a little, you know, lack of interest even then. And Mike goes, I'll never forget. Mike's got this way about him when he says things, and he goes, this guy Kenny is the Midas touch. And this was before we had done anything. Like I said, we had maybe played one gig, and Mike was saying that. I'm like going, what is he talking about? Like, you know, doesn't he know that this band isn't going anywhere? They can't even play. And he's talking about the guy having the Midas, but Mike was right. Kenny had the Midas touch. Hey, it's the most extraordinary story in all of music, because never has it been, you know, I hear that Kurt Cobain was a super taskmaster, and he, like, you know, used to, and he was a lot like Kenny, you know, but he took a lot more drugs.
Right.
So, but very rarely does a man or a woman, a single person, take their band to the level of the Dropkick Murphys without, like, outside assistance. And Kenny did that. I'm not saying they don't have a manager now, and they don't have a great booking agent, and they don't have, like, and they're not like a regular band now, but he took that band to great heights on his own. You know, like Taylor Swift couldn't do that. Like any super popular, I'm not saying that the Dropkick Murphys are as popular as Taylor Swift, and I'm not saying that Taylor Swift isn't a gifted person, but it's like any band that somebody comes along and takes that band to the next level. Kenny was the one that took the band to the next level. I'll never forget when one day Kenny comes to me and he goes, I'm firing Stormy Shepherd, who was like the booking agent in punk rock. You know, she booked everyone, Rancid, everyone. Yeah. And I go, really? And he goes, yep. And he goes, well, we need to go in a different direction with a new booking agent. I was like, what a power play. And I remember he was real nervous. I think we were in Seattle. No, I just remember walking around with him. He had to make the call. It was the only time I've ever seen him nervous about making a call. He was afraid to make that call, but he made the call, and he fired Stormy Shepherd. And I'm like, wow, what a power. Like, and he would make these unconventional maneuvers all the time. You know, getting the Red Sox involved. And I mean, these are ordinary things that bands would do. Right. You know what I mean? And he did it all. Yeah. And he just knew what he wanted, and he went and got it, and he did it. And it's fascinating, really, to think about. You know, like, I don't think Paul McCartney, like, put the Beatles on his shoulders and catapulted them to fame by, like, doing all the legwork. He made up the songs, and he sang and played, but he didn't have the phone on his ear at all times, like, setting up tours and firing booking agents, stuff like that. Like, I just don't think that that's what bands do.
No, yeah, no, especially at that level.
Kenny was more like the manager, like he was like a manager in a way. Like, it was incredible to watch what he did and to see everything, and still to this day, it's like, I was talking to this guy that works for the management company down in Nashville. We went to see the Murphys back on March 4th. And this guy was like saying the same thing. He's like, yeah, he goes, they're like, they just keep delivering the goods. And I go, yes, they do.
Yeah. That's awesome. So
they still do it. I'm so proud of that band where they've gone. Like, I don't even consider myself any part of that band. Like, I think they're like a very, like, they're almost like nobility for like the way they've done it. It's so different, and like, then they've never had a hit song. I mean, they had that song on the movie.
Yeah.
But they've just done it unconventionally. And I love when bands do it that way. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, all the moves they've made have been these incredible moves, and they're just a great band. I mean, did you ever go see them?
I actually have only seen them once. Was one time, as it was an incredible show. They were doing a co-headlining tour with Flog Molly. So, Flog Molly went on first, and then Dropkick was on, and they were just like, it was incredible that, like, from the moment they stepped on the stage, like they had the crowd. I mean, like, yeah, you're going to like this like bigger venue and you're going to see them, but like, I've seen other bigger bands at bigger venues and they don't necessarily have the crowd. They're just there to do their thing. But I mean, like the second they walked on stage, like, that was it. This was like they took you and just played for, I think I want to say they played for like an hour and a half straight, and it was just amazing. So yeah, no, they are very, very, very good. But and it's like one of the things that's like, when you're talking about that, and I never realized, like, like how, obviously, Ken's like the face of the band for the most part. But like, I don't realize how much, like, I guess the legwork and the I guess the dirty work that he had to do. But in a way, like, couldn't you kind of say, like, maybe to a point, like, the band was sort of like at a point and almost maybe you're leaving, maybe like pushed it to go to that next level. Maybe that was kind of like a push that was needed for like Ken to move forward with it even further.
No. He was going there.
He was going there regardless. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
It was just whether or not you wanted to be there with him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I kind of like, what's interesting to think about is if Mike hadn't quit, like, say we got along, to wonder what if we just stayed as a little four-piece, the original lineup, if we would have become, like the modern day Clash, or
right.
If we would because those first couple albums, of course, Al is singing on by the second album, and I've never really listened to those albums, but I mean, I think I haven't listened to it for a long time, but I know they're good. Like, I just know those first two especially are really good, and I wonder what we would have morphed into, like how the progression would have happened, what it would have become. I mean, I know a lot of people, well, not a lot, but a few of the old fans would be like, yeah, that was incredible,
Yeah.
But these newer people, and now they're not even new anymore. They're older people. They love the Murphys. The Murphys have, like, there's a few bands out there that are like that have this incredible base of fans. So it's very popular. It's always been this way in like, well, we used to call it hard rock, but in metal, like, bands like Iron Maiden and stuff, and Abbott, and those metalheads are so loyal to their band, man. You know what I mean? Yeah. And the Murphys have that type of following. It's just the most loyal fans. They're not going to not come. It's not going to be like something they do and then they say, oh, yeah, they suck. Like, their fans are with them.
Yep.
Really strongly. And you can see it when you go to a show. It's like, my God, these people worship this band. And they're the fan base of all ages, which is another cool thing that Kenny was able to pull off. Families go to see them.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, my parents romped me off at the Kiss concert. I wasn't going to Kiss with my mother and father.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, people go to the Murphys and it's like the kids,
Yeah.
and it's like Uncle Joe and Aunt Susie and stuff, and those people have money, so they're going and buying all the merch. It's like, wow, there's another coup for Kenny. How did he figure that out to get like multi-generational people coming to his shows? No one's ever done that in the history of music. Rock and roll.
Yep.
Anyway, we were dropped off to go see Kiss or AC/DC or whatever band we were going to see. The parents didn't come.
No.
That would have been insane.
Yeah.
But there you go, Kenny, cross-generational.
Yeah.
Fan base. It's just unbelievable.
Well, that's like I have like a younger siblings. Like one of them is the normal co-host of the podcast here. But like when they got to a certain age, like there's like a 12-year gap between me and the oldest of, I call him season 2. And once he got to that age of like being old enough to go to shows, I was the one who had to take them, because my dad wasn't taking them. My stepmom wasn't taking them. So they, and if they wanted to go, they had to like basically call up me and like, Paul, will you take us to see like whatever? I'm like, yeah, whatever, just get the tickets and we'll go, or you know what I mean? So like there were some shows that I took them to where I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm watching this. But I was there with them, and and now it's, especially with like the Dropkick Murphys, as you're saying, that's not like really an issue. Like the whole family's like, we're gonna go see the Dropkick Murphys. So
yeah.
Yep. So you still talk to those guys, like, are now and whatnot. You seem to be on pretty good terms. Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah, down in Nashville, Kenny had me and my brother come and play a couple songs with him.
Well, that was the next thing I was going to ask you. Like, has there been any talk of you joining them on stage? But I guess you have here and there.
Yeah, this past March 4th, we got up and jumped up and did an old Outlet song and Ballroom Heroes. I prefer not to do that. Like when I went to see them in Boston, I didn't get up on stage because most of their audience doesn't even know who I am.
Right.
And once again, I don't have that thing where 5,000 people going ape shit to a song. It doesn't do anything for me.
Right.
It's like, when can I execute the song and get off of this as soon as possible?
Right.
I just feel like clumsy up there. Like the show in Nashville, I wasn't feeling it. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
And, we executed and it was okay and everything, but I don't know.
Uh-huh.
No, I like going and I hang out and I talk with them. I go to the sound shack and then, last time up in Maine, me and the guys, we went and got haircuts. That's what I prefer to do that. I just getting up on the stage with the band is like, that's almost as bad as getting up there and playing my own stuff. It's like, it's hard for me. Yeah, so that's the answer to that. No, I don't.
Right.
I've done it, but I don't like to do it, and it's not a regular thing. I don't chase after them.
Uh-huh.
I do love hanging out with them.
Right.
Like the guys in the band, went down to Nashville. Like I had this hour-long conversation with James. He's James Lynch. He's an incredible. And Jeff DeRosa is nice, and Tim and Matt Kelly's like salt of the earth. I painted Matt's house a few times, and I like talking to him about things. And when Al was in the band, and I still talk to Al, and Al's a great friend. I love Al.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I like them as people now.
Right.
Not as a bandmate. I prefer it that way. And because I already had my trial run being a bandmate, and Kenny and I aren't like on speed dial,
Okay.
as they say, but we talk to each other all the time and text each other, and if something funny comes up, he'll send me something, and it's just he's busy, of course.
Yes.
But he gets back to me, and like I said, I respect him now and realize what it was all about. When I didn't know at the time, I didn't get it. Now I get it.
So it leads me to ask you about what is going on with Continental.
I don't know. I mean, it was weird. We had played for about 10 years from like 09 till December of 2000. We did our last show in Germany on December 8th, 2000. We had decided that was a grueling, I think we were over there for about 10 weeks in Europe, and we did like 60 shows, and we're not playing like the O2 Arena. I mean, I'm talking about pubs, what I mean, which are great, but you play long sets, and sometimes you play 2 or 3 sets, and I don't mind that, and I have the stamina to do that. But we kind of like people, we didn't even say anything, but we knew after that tour we were going to take a long time off. Well, guess what? We took a year off and then the pandemic hit. So that turned a year into 2 or 3 years or 4 years. And then it was just like, we put out a record though about 2 years ago. And we played a show at, it happened at the Boston last show. We played at the outdoors at the Palladium in Worcester. It was a NoFX tour. Boston's were on it and Pennywise, and we kind of opened the show, and it was good and everything. But you know, it was just it kind of run its course. Steven's more into painting, but we always had a revolving cast of characters, and the idea was to make it easy on people. Like, you know, we didn't want to. I didn't want the bad band experience, and it worked out great because we had 7 guitar players, 5 drummers over the year, and the funniest part is like they're all friends with each other now. Like everyone's like friendly, and you know they all came to Steven's wedding, and I mean we had this group picture of about 9 Continental band members, you know, that not including me and Steven. And that's the way I kind of wanted it. I wanted it to be that way so that because I don't want people to have to feel pressure to play music anymore. I can't wait to play with my new band. I want to instill the same kind of thing, like no pressure attitude. Music's hard. I mean, you know, it's not hard if you're, like, it's probably not hard for, like, John Mayer or, you know, some person like that, although they probably have all kinds of other difficulties and problems. Or, you know, if you're, like, Vince Gill, like, these people that are just so gifted, beyond gifted, like, you know, music's probably not that hard for them. But the run-of-the-mill, average Joe guys out there strumming that guitar and stuff, it can be not easy, man. Because we know that those people are the ones that we have to compare ourselves to, and we're never going to get there. You know, and I mean, we know who those people are. They're on American Idol and The Voice. You see them. Yep. You watch them and you go, my God. I know I've already alluded to this, but it's just, those people are so talented. Yeah, it's unbelievable how much talent they have. There's like millions and millions and millions of gifted younger people, you know, and you or somebody might not like the exact music they're playing, but man, are they good. Yep. Like, really good. Yes. And it just made you like, whoa, this is incredible how good they are.
And that's one of the things I mention about on the podcast all the time and just music in general, that like, just because I don't like something doesn't mean it's not good. It's just not necessarily for me. It wasn't necessarily written for me. It doesn't speak to me, but these people have fucking talent and they're really good at what they're doing. And obviously someone likes them and they speak to those people. And I think that's great.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah, I do too. I don't begrudge anybody up. I like, you know, if a person, even if a person is like at a restaurant, getting up there, and in fact, down in St. Petersburg along the beach, there are these musicians. Sometimes they'll stop and they're doing like they've revamped like a Johnny Cash cover song. There's these 2 guys who play acoustic guitar, and they're so much better. They don't have Johnny Cash's unique style, okay? Right. But musically, they're just as good or better than like Johnny Cash's band. They're so good, and they're playing at this little place called Ricky T's, and they're just incredible. And I stop on the street when I'm walking by, like depending on what the talent is that night, and it's just go, oh my God. Some of them actually inspired me to go back to my motel room and write a song. Like, that's when something's really good, you know, I get inspired to make something up because I'm like, man, with those guys. And it's all over the place. And it's everywhere. And it's all ages and people who just got good. Like when we started out playing, we didn't even know what a bar chord was. Like, my brother played the campfire chords for 3 years. We were playing like Alice Cooper's and Grand Funk, you know, back in like 1972, 73 when we first started playing. And I used to say, it just doesn't sound right. I was the alleged singer of this. This is when we first started. And I go, something about it. I go, I don't know. Like, we didn't have video. There were no videos. There was nothing. We hadn't even been to shows yet. There were concerts. Well, there weren't shows, but my first concert was Kiss in 1975. So we're trying to figure this thing out. Like, how do these bands like Grand Funk and Deep Purple and stuff, how do they sound like that? And we're just like on this clean guitar through through like a Sears Silvertone amp, and we're trying to sound like Grand Funk and Deep Purple. And then one day this kid came over, and he was in junior high with us, seventh grade or some sixth grade or whatever it was. And he comes over and he whips out a big muff, and he knew how to play bar chords.
Oh.
And I go, my God, there it is. And we called him a bar chord player. This is how these kids are pulling up these YouTube videos, and they're like, if they have any musical ability, they're playing like Eddie Van Halen within like 2 or 3 years.
Yep.
They're like masters. They're learning it all right out of the gate. We were on campfire chords. We didn't even know what a bar chord was, and then we didn't know what any kind of a effect was to give you that sound or anything. You know, we were so up against it trying to learn how to, do this thing. And yeah, so I don't know. It's just the kids nowadays, and because we had one of the kids in Continental as drummer, and some of them. And you go, how do they get this good so young? It's fascinating.
Yeah.
Mind-blowing, really.
Yeah. So I was doing some like just kind of random like searching on Spotify one day, and I need to ask you about this because it's not on your wiki page. Who was Rick Barton and the Shadow Blasters?
That was right when I quit the Murphys.
Okay.
And I enlisted some of my friends from the Boston music scene. Paul Kohansky played bass. These guys were from the Swingin' Stakes. Jim Gambino played piano. I got this legendary Boston guitar player that used to be in Willie Alexander band, and he played in the Nervous Eaters. This guy, Billy Lucidian, played lead guitar. And Craig McIntyre played drums. Joe Donnelly played drums on 4 songs, and Craig played on the rest of the album, and we made a record right away. And we were signed on this little local label. Then I still had the bug. I just quit the Murphys. Yeah, how does that record sound?
Oh, that sounds great. Sounds great. It definitely sounds like, like I can but I can hear where like how Continental kind of came from that, because correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't like Continental come about where like Steven found like a bunch of like old demos you had and was like, you should record these, and you were like, only if you play bass for them?
Not exactly.
Okay.
Steven heard me playing some of the songs, just sitting around on the acoustic guitar. He goes, I kind of like that one. One of the first songs was the first song from our first full length, Curious Spell. And he goes, how about if me and my friends play some of your songs? And they were like, the drummer was 16 and Steven was about 18, and the guitar player was like 19, maybe 18 or something like that. And I go, okay, well, I'll come down and show you guys some songs. And once again, there it is. It's like I'm coming down to the Murphys. So I go down to Kyle was the drummer, and I go down to the basement, and all of a sudden we start playing, and this kid's active on guitar, and I didn't even know Steven knew how to play. And next thing I know, they're all good. And I go, wow, this is weird. They're all good. Like, they're all better than me. And I said, okay, well, maybe this thing will have some legs. I contacted someone, got a little recording contract. We put out an EP, and then I said, and then we're going to tour, and then we just went for it.
Yeah.
It's like, it was kind of shocking how good they were. So that's how that came about. A story. Steven heard my stuff, said we should play that. And
Nice. Well, I don't know if you remember, the first time we actually met was here in Philly.
in Philly.
Yes, yeah. And you were on tour with the Continental. Yeah. It was like beginning of March. It was supposed to be. We were supposed to be in just the local opener, and then there was another band I was supposed to play, and it was Continental, and then the Tossers. But the band, the Mighty Steph, I think that was supposed to be the second band. They never showed up. The stage manager.
You played extra long.
We did. We played like an hour and a half straight, and it was like a lot of it was on the fly. But I mean, we do a lot of that, the Irish bar stuff anyway. So it really wasn't that big of a deal. But like, I don't know if you remember this. I remember walking off stage, and like I put my guitar away, and I'm walking like to the back to like where my friends were standing, and you stopped me, and you were like, man, that was a really good version of Fisherman's Blues. Which like I was like, for me, I was like, oh my god, like you were like paying attention, and like you thought enough to like pay me that compliment. That like really like stands out to me, just in general, is like kind of like one of my like, this is what I did moments. You know what I mean?
I like to. That's the best thing about touring. You get to see new music every night. Yeah, and you guys were good.
Yeah. Hey, and actually, well, it's funny. Like, I've played with you a few times. Did a solo a couple times when you guys have come through Philly, and I'm gonna put you on the spot here because I don't know what the exact quote was because you never actually said it. But is it true that like your feeling is that if you ever come to Philly, your favorite band to play with is Birmingham Six?
You guys, it is. I actually ran into a couple of other really cool bands, and I've always forgot the names of them, and I always feel guilty to play. Do you know Gary?
Gary, there's a lot of Garys.
He has like a little coffee shop on Facebook. He goes as oh god, John F. Kennedy, but Jawn.
Yeah, Dawn. Okay. No, not really, but I'm sure I've probably run into him. I'm actually really bad with names myself as well.
Yeah, but anyway, he had a little venue in his coffee shop. And one night we played with these two bands that were just like one band sounded like a combination of The Replacement. They had one of those gifted frontmen that was just a great writer, but he was wicked shy. They sounded like The Replacements meets like the Real Kids, an old Boston band, and they were so unbelievable. But it was just another band that probably never went anywhere. I don't remember their names. Like if they didn't have any music, but and it's like I sometimes I get sad over all these people that are out there, that aren't able to but that's just life, right? I mean,
Yep.
In sports and anything, it's like there's talented people that aren't ever going to be able to do what they do best.
Yep.
You don't make a living at it. But I love playing with you guys. But I don't know that we're going to be touring again. But I'll tell you what, if the new band comes down there, we'll play together.
Absolutely. That would be awesome. That'd be awesome. So, we are a vinyl record podcast here. It's actually generally what we talk about is just different records and whatnot. So I got to ask you a couple podcast related questions here. So, like, do you collect vinyl at all? Do you have a vinyl collection?
I used to, and then when me and my last wife got divorced in 2010, I got rid of everything, and I took to the road, me and my dog, and it was just me, a bag and a guitar, and we stayed on the road for 4 years, and I didn't have anything after that. And then, so that's that.
Yeah. Okay. So in general, like, what are like vinyl, not vinyl, whatever, like, what are some of like your favorite albums?
Oh, I hate that question, right?
Actually, I didn't know you hated your questions.
I think everybody, that's such a tough question because it depends what kind of mood you're in at the moment. I don't know. So I did a radio show about a month ago, so I'll pick out some of the songs that I played. I love the Kinks' Muswell Hillbillies album. That's one of my favorite all-time albums. Nice. I played a song off of that. That album seems to always be in my top 5. I think it came out in 1971 on RCA, and it's just. Have you ever listened to it?
I have. It's a great album. I haven't delved that deeply into the Kinks, but I do. That album does stand out to me.
Yeah, I'm not a huge Kinks fan. But they have some great stuff, And let's see. I love The Replacements, Let It Be, and Tim and Pleased to Meet. I love The Replacements. Yeah. I love the Buzzcocks. All those albums were recorded. They're just great. I love Wilco.
I think one of the cool things about The Replacements, I too love The Replacements. I was very, very happy that I got to see them. Like, I didn't see them when they did their reunion a couple of years ago, but I did get to see them open for Elvis Costello back in like 91, as a matter of fact. Like, one of the coolest things about that band that I thought is like when you listen to The Replacements Stink, which is like their first like EP.
Yeah.
And how much they evolved, like just as a band and musically, like through the years and the changes they made and just still continue to, like All Shook Down is like, there's like almost like two opposite ends of the spectrum, and it's all good. Everything in between is all good.
Yeah, that's because Paul Westerberg is a near genius. I could call anyone in music a genius. I mean, I might call Bob Dylan a genius. Westerberg is. That's what you get when you get a gifted writer. That's exactly what you get. The evolution of his mood, style, like sound, the evolution of it. And he's one of those guys. Another guy is Frank Black from the Pixies.
Yes.
He's another near just, and and I love him. And I don't know, I could go on and on with the whole music thing and Tom Waits, and the Pogues, and it could keep going.
Yes.
So that's the only reason I don't like that question.
No, I hear you, but that's I wasn't looking for like specifics, just some of the things that you know what I mean, that you seemed that you enjoyed or whatnot. So I do appreciate you delving into it a little bit there. So
yeah, you know what? One time, this guy, I hope I can. I know I'm going to meet this guy Ross Halfin. I'm name dropping now. He's like a legend rock photographer. He works with he worked with Zeppelin like way back when Zeppelin was Zeppelin. He photographs Aerosmith. He's one of those guys and he's British, of course. And he's like, and me and my friend that works for Aerosmith, we went out to dinner recently when Aerosmith was playing at Fenway Park. Like last year, the year before, was their 50th anniversary show, and so we're sitting there at dinner. Man, I think those guys they get all this expensive food. There was only 4 of us, and the bill came to like $600. I was kind of shocked. But anyway, they're getting all the best, right?
Yeah.
It's like Steven Tyler's bodyguard, and this guy Ross Halfin, and my friend John, and so Ross turns to me, and Ross is one of those guys that he's very much. I've met him before, but he gets in your. He doesn't back down. He bosses these bands around, and he, very English, and he'll tell you what, he doesn't like you, he tells it like it is right away, and he doesn't take any shit. And so he says, all of a sudden he turns to me and he goes, "What's your favorite band?" And I go, "Geez, Ross, I hit it when you were saying." I go, "AC/DC." I was like so scared. He goes, "Good answer." And he goes, and back then records, for some reason, they used to get released on Tuesdays. Yeah. Records and movies. I think I'll move to Friday somewhere along the line. But and and when I always say we, because me and my brother, we did everything together. But every day we'd get home from school, and we had this big giant stereo, and we put on that "Let There Be Rock" and "Go Down Will Come On." We have it on 10. Blow our eardrums out, and we listen to that record over and over and over. And and AC/DC was a huge influence. In fact, that was one of the, when Matt Kelly auditioned for our band, he played like half a song. I think he was playing maybe "Boys on the Dock" or one of those early Dropkick Murphy songs. And I stopped halfway through. I go, "Well, look at this guy. He's the guy, right?" It's like everything about him. He was the drummer for the band. So I stopped halfway through and I go, "I got one question for you. Do you like AC/DC?" And he goes, "I love AC/DC." And I go, "You got the job." It was just one of those things that was so obvious that Matt Kelly was in. Sure enough, here he is, 30 years later, and he's still the guy.
Nice.
But I did the same thing with Al Barr. I said, "That's the guy," and sure enough, he was. So even though Kenny was the brains, did all the work, I still at least had a little bit of, I had some knowledge about what I was doing. But anyway, so fast forward, we were with the AC/DC thing. Yeah, so I got to see them on their very first U.S. tour, August 8th, 1970. And that was the most mind-blowing thing because I was a 16-year-old kid. Watching them, they played a concert called "A Day for the Kids." It was $3. It had all these bands like Charlie Daniels, Pat Travers, Grinder Switch, and and then some other Southern bands. But I knew AC/DC because for some reason, none of my friends up north knew them. Back then, it was things were regional, like a band would be popular in the Midwest, like REO Speedwagon or something, and then no one else would know them, because we didn't have. It's not like it is nowadays, where suddenly everyone knows the band right away. Back then, it would take a grassroots thing of years before some parts of the country would find out about a band. But anyway, they came on stage, and I was like, it was the most mind-blowing thing, because the song that they were playing, believe it or not, on the radio down in Florida was "She's Got Balls," which I thought was really kind of weird, because it was what's the word for, it was generic, middle of the road radio down in Florida at the time. And all of a sudden I hear that song, and I go, "What is this?" I go, "Holy crap." So I had been waiting for this band, and then I had been waiting for that album to come out, and we bought it right away. But there have been other, ones. I remember one time seeing Elvis Costello at Cape Cod Coliseum back in 1980, and that was one of the best concerts I ever saw. I remember after about the first 5 songs, the crowd was going so crazy. Might have been 79, but Elvis stopped and he goes, "Don't worry, we're going to be playing all night long." And sure enough, they played for about 3.5 hours, and it was just a mind-blowing show. And then another one, which was, I think, 84. It was 1980, November 14th, 94. It was 2 days before my birthday. Someone just gave me a ticket to go see The Cure at the Orpheum Theater. And I liked The Cure, and I loved Boys Don't Cry, and I had always loved The Cure. They were identified with the goth scene.
Yes.
I even actually like the goth scene, but I love their style. That was one of the best concerts I ever saw in my life. It was so good. And they had this drummer. I don't know his name, but I don't know. I don't think he was the original drummer. Maybe he was. Orpheum Theater, The Cure, they did like 3 or 4 encores. They did about 12 encore songs, and it was just tense how good they were. I mean, they were so good. Another incredible concert that I saw, not even way back. It was like 2009, I believe. Remember when Morrissey was on that tour where you had like the muscles, like you got the album with the muscles? And they played at the House of Blues, and that was a mind-blowing concert. Morrissey, it was incredible.
Nice.
So the thing goes on and on with these, with the music and what we've seen, and I've tour. I see so many small bands that are so good, but I mean, music is alive and well.
Yes, it is.
And a lot of my peers, they don't think so. They think it died in 1984 or something. It didn't. It kept going.
Yeah.
With or without us, it kept going.
And that's one of the things that drives me nuts sometimes when talking to people about music. Like, that will immediately stop the conversation. We're like, well, nothing good. There's nothing good now. It's like, nah, it's, I'm older now. I don't, I can't, I guess, create the way that I used to be able to create, but that doesn't mean that there's nothing good coming out. I'm just, it's not for me. Rock and roll is still, it's still alive. It just looks different.
Yeah. There's great music out there. I mean, you might have heard a quote by Henry Rollins. He said you might just have to dig a little deeper, right? But it's there. But the only reason you have to dig deeper is because there's so much music.
Yes, that is.
If I run into somebody and they say they don't play music, I go, "Oh my God!" I bow to them. I go, "You're lucky that you never play music." Yeah, they go, and because everybody plays music, and it's a good thing. I mean, or any creative activity is good for a person. It's good for the soul, you know what I mean? But once you start aspiring to become, the next Green Day, that's when the trouble starts.
I always say, I don't want to be the next something. I want to be the first Paul Weiss. That's how I always looked at it, whether it's been with music or, briefly when I was trying to be an actor, or, you know what I mean? Or whatever. Just, that's just how I always looked at it. It's like, well, no, I don't want to be the next something. I want to be who I am, and that's what I want people to love.
Yep. Well, listen, Paul, I'm tired.
Yep. I was actually about to say this is probably a good time for us to start to wrap this up. So first of all, Rick, thank you so much for doing this and coming on here and talking music with me for, at this point, almost 2 hours. And this is great. For everybody out there in listening land, go check out Rick Barton's 2 solo albums that have recently come out, Nowhere Man and Coming Home, and then in the fall will be The Great Unknown. This has been so much fun for me, Rick. I hope you've enjoyed your time here on the Country Hipster Podcast.
Yeah, it's been great. You've been great. Thank you, Paul.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Next week, Adam will be back, and we will be discussing Skinny Lister, The Devil, the Heart, and the Fight. And once again, Rick, thank you for coming on. And everybody, it is time to...